Justin, thank you for those very kind remarks, Your Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen. I have just come from the Warsaw climate negotiations, so what I thought in Poland, and so I thought I'd give you a little update on what's been happening there in relation to forests, and perhaps just range over a couple of thoughts about where we are with tropical deforestation, and then give two examples of some practical steps that companies can take to get on board with this issue. The negotiations, as always, have been proceeding slowly, but you'll be glad to know that the forest part of it has gone quite well, rather better than some other sectors. It was slightly disconcerting when the host country's president said that really what they want to do is go to 100% coal in their country, and indeed 120% coal, because they want to export lots of it, and it should be just made more efficient. I suppose you could say we are still therefore poles apart. It's a cheap joke, but there's nothing cheap about Typhoon Haiyan, which has cast its shadow over the proceedings. Speeds of 320 kilometers per hour, the most powerful on record. Now, no one can say that that particular typhoon is caused by climate change. But the Philippine chief negotiator began the whole event by saying he was going on a fast, and he's now on the 9th day of his fast, in sympathy with his country and asking for an agreement, a substantive agreement to be made. The drivers of deforestation are immense, and for the first time they're getting into these negotiations. How big? Well, consider, sir, your efforts in getting forests on the agenda, and the achievement in Copenhagen was to produce, in a sense, about $1 billion a year in the Fast Start mechanism to try and reduce deforestation. But up against it, we have 134 billion, which is the export valuation of the supply chains that are the major cause of deforestation. Agriculture is the big sumo wrestler of deforestation and climate change. How do you defeat a sumo? I don't know if any of you have ever fought a sumo wrestler, but if you saw one coming across the room at you, the only way you could bring them down and change their course of direction is to use their power and weight and pull them round. There's no way you can push them back. And we have to think like that by engaging the agricultural sector in stopping deforestation. Take beef, one of the major causes of deforestation, beef and leather products in Brazil. There are 210 million cows in Brazil. That's more people than cows. The major exports now for Brazil are to China through Hong Kong. If the Chinese population just ate 100 grams more beef each, those 210 million cows in Brazil will not be enough to feed them. Big agri will only get bigger. And so the challenge is, how can we do more with less? How do you go from 1 cow per hectare to 2 cows per hectare? And another big challenge is, who will pay for this transition? Because there are big upfront costs here to be involved. Improved genetics, rotational grazing schemes. In the case of palm oil, you might have to take out existing trees, replace them with new ones that are more productive. But if you're a poor farmer living at the front line of deforestation, and you've got someone here offering you $40 for a tree so you can send your child to school, you will take that $40. And if someone says, well, put in new trees because they'll produce more with less, they say, well, I'm going to have no palm oil for 4 or 5 years whilst they grow, and who's paying me for that and paying for the trees? This is the role where governments and REDD+, and indeed the private sector, can come in. But the numbers are pretty big. Just in Brazil, to restore the degraded land, which is, there's a large amount of it in Brazil, the estimate is around about 45 billion that's needed to restore the degraded land. But the government is only talking at the moment in terms of putting up about 2 billion. To me, this is really the billion-dollar business case that business needs to stop deforestation. It's a wonderful opportunity for public-private partnership on a grand scale. A private partnership for food, for forests, and for livelihoods. To make this happen, we need catalysts for change. We need supply chain catalysts. certification, yes, but not lots of different ones, possibly at a landscape scale, a jurisdictional certification mechanism that can make all these things work together, but on a much bigger scale. We need financial catalysts. We need things like differentiated import taxes, or possibly subsidies, that make a difference between what is good and what is bad. The importation of palm oil into China and into India. India is the largest importer. And whilst we do salute everything that Gavin is doing with Unilever and other companies as well, unless we get these major markets engaged and transform their market pool to be for good rather than bad, we're not going to solve this problem. Data and transparency is also key. We need to know how well we're doing along this track and to have good and reliable data, and we must make it simple to collect, not complicated. So I'll just offer up two initiatives that are helping to make what Your Royal Highness has often said, natural capital, visible. The problem is our use of natural capital is invisible in our economy, and that gives us a very false price signal about what the true cost of things really are. The first of these I'll mention is the Natural Capital Declaration, which I helped to launch in Rio in 2012 with our Deputy Prime Minister and quite a number of other heads of state alongside the World Bank's initiative. What we were trying to do here is get companies, governments, and the financial sector to get on board with understanding their natural capital footprint in natural capital accounting. It's a relatively new process. The financial sector is very important to bring all this in because there is a tsunami of money flowing around the world that is destroying natural capital, and it often doesn't realize the extent of its footprint. So we need to engage the financial sector in a learning process to understand what that footprint is and the methodologies needed to reduce it. And that is precisely what the Natural Capital Declaration is doing. 45 CEOs of major financial institutions have signed up. The World Bank's International Finance Corporation, I'm glad to say, is chairing our steering committee, and 4 working groups, all led by banks, are underway and doing their work. The second is the Forest Footprint Disclosure Project, which I helped to launch, indeed with the help of His Royal Highness's International Sustainability Unit in 2009. This is a roadmap for the corporate sector to understand its forest footprint. And of course, when you talk to many people in the corporate sector, they might say, what on earth are you talking about? I make cars. I haven't got a forest footprint. But if you're sitting on leather seats in those cars and they came from the Amazon, you might well have a forest footprint. So this is now in the good hands of CDP, and we're going to hear in a moment from them about the progress it has made. And I'm very encouraged by the way that's going. Ladies and gentlemen, what we're looking at here is nothing less than a revolution in our economy. It's not going to happen overnight, but looking back many years from now, we'll see how over these decades it began here. We need a new economy where the cost of capital includes natural capital, where everything we make has come full circle because all waste has been recycled, where sustainability, or the concept of it in a sense, or at least the departments, are redundant because we're all doing it. Your Royal Highness leadership is also needed, and there's no better example to explain and have leaders talking in these terms, because there is no better example of a circular economy than a rainforest. It sips energy from the sun and produces almost no waste at all, other than something that looks like a cup of tea without milk in it. And yet, it supports the greatest expression of biodiversity the world has ever known. Ladies and gentlemen, we all need to learn how to become deforestation free. Thank you very much.